So today we've got Roger McBride on the podcast, who is MD of Worker Bee Coffee.
Tea and coffee.
Worker Bee Tea and Coffee.
Originally coffee, now tea and coffee.
Okay. Based in Stockport.
Yeah.
And I know from experience, it's a pleasure actually, because I love coffee, and if I see a Worker Bee Coffee sign outside a coffee shop, it's usually a good sign that the coffee's good in there. So anyway, welcome.
Thank you. I'm a bit biased to it. Anyway. Yeah.
So yeah, thanks for coming on. I suppose it'd be really good to know a bit more about you and how you got into doing this, and I mean, yeah, we've only got an hour. So.
Oh yeah, it might take an hour. I have been asked it it's probably the most common question people ask: how did I get into coffee? Because a lot of people, as you say, love coffee, and they're really interested in people that are in the coffee environment. My background, I'll go all the way back even to childhood. I was brought up, my family were very sports orientated, so we played a lot of sport, a lot of competitive sport, badminton, golf, swimming, like a lot of people do. And then I went to uni, did a sports degree. So because we played competitively quite a lot, I thought, well, I don't want my work life to be sport as well. So I decided to go into something different, and would you believe it, I ended up being a cigarette rep. Okay. So the sports degree, sport oriented, and ended up selling cigarettes. But I just wanted to get into the sales environment, and I remember flicking through the grocer at the back pages, where anyone that's in sales would know all about the grocer magazine and the jobs at the back in the good old days. And I saw this advert, which was very well paid. So being a greedy little 23, 24-year-old, I applied, and at that time actually I just graduated, and I was a duty manager in a hotel in Wakefield. So a bit random how I ended up, but I didn't want to be working 70 hours a week for £10,000 a year. No. So hard graft is sort of built in there. Ironically, I ended up working in the tobacco industry quite well. Got promoted, moved abroad, ran Southern Europe, came back to the UK. So I'd always been in the sales environment, done pretty well, and ended up in sales management. But I'd sort of gone as far as I wanted to, saw what's happening in the tobacco market, so I was lucky enough to be able to come out on a nice redundancy package. Sure. But then I went into property, did that for a couple of years, just sort of have a bit of fun, and then I thought I need to get back into employment, otherwise my CV wouldn't be great. So I just happened to put it out, one of the headhunters I knew said, do you fancy, I thought you were self-employed, what you're going to do, why you come back into employment. So I went, well, I'm not saying I am, but I'm not saying I'm not. And then he just said to me at that point, I'm getting a typical Irish story, 3 stories round one. Yeah. He says, how do you fancy coffee? And I said, well, I'm from Ireland, I drink tea, I don't drink coffee, so I don't really know how it would be in that environment. And he goes, well, you did all right in, it was Imperial Tobacco I worked for. He says, you did okay in tobacco and you didn't smoke, which was correct. So I went into the coffee market and the sales regional manager side of things, so a couple of levels below. But what I realised, I did about 10 years in tobacco, and because you're sort of siloed in the tobacco market, you don't know how good or how bad it is. But once you step out of it, you realise how good the training was. So I even identified the company I work for in the I won't say who it is, in the coffee market. They were very big and they were making a lot of money, but there was a lot of basic structures they hadn't got in place from a sales point of view. Right. And they were always changing. I was on the road again doing 45,000 miles a year, up at 5 in the morning. I went, I've done this 10 years ago. I'm really past it. So that's when I decided to start my own coffee business, based in Manchester. Why don't we start concentrating on building the business up on local supply, and I don't have to travel 3.5 hours to get there. So I said that I started off the whole coffee buy local before it became cool and trendy. Yeah. And that was nearly 16 years ago now. And it was all about, if you've got an independent coffee shop out there, they want their local community to go into their coffee shop and not the big brand names. And I couldn't understand how many independent coffee shops were buying big brands, which was a contradiction of what they were doing. Yeah. So I would go in with the local brand saying, well, why do you not support me? Because I buy my groceries here, I play my sports here, we support, it's all about making your money work locally. And that was my ethos from day one. So that's, I don't know if that's answered your question, but that's how I got into coffee. It was more from a sales point of view than it was a love for coffee.
Sure.
But don't get me wrong, I have a love. Coffee's when you look at what tobacco used to bring to people to what coffee brings to them now, it's actually very similar. But obviously the health implications are slightly different. And it's all about bringing people together. Sure. So mine was all about giving people a pleasant experience, but also putting a brand there. And I find even now there's this, I would say our unique selling point or our point of difference is, because I've come from a branding background, we all buy brands. We all are visual. But there's not many small businesses that run as a brand. So that's why we focused on good quality product, good packaging, and good branding. But I had another company, my original one was called Elanos, which was named after my goddaughter Ellen. But Ellen Coffee didn't sound very coffee-like. So I ended up putting an OS on it and then calling it Elanos or Elanos, and everyone thought I brought a brand in from Italy. Right. Because it looked like that type of corporate brand. And then obviously 2017 we had trademarked Worker Bee before the bomb. But I didn't get a chance to launch it, and then with obviously what happened, it was like, well, I'm not jumping on the bandwagon by any means, but when we launched it, we gave 50% of the sales to the charities we supported. So it was very much about 360-degree support. Yeah. But it was amazing when I had got two brands going at the same time. I got Elanos and I'd got Worker Bee, and everyone loved Worker Bee. And everyone sort of loved me selling Elanos. Right, yeah. The difference was the brand of Worker Bee was so much better. So it was probably the best thing that happened to the business. It's a much nicer brand. It stands for what it's all about, which is all about Manchester, supporting local business, and coffees for everyone. Obviously, I said I'm a tea and coffee company. We're a one-stop shop, and that's again something else we do a bit differently, because you're either a coffee company or a tea company or a chocolate company, or you buy someone else's product to support you. We are a one-stop shop through tea, coffee, chocolate, and our brand concept behind it. So that makes us a little bit different. Obviously we support the two charities, which are Forever Manchester and Maggie's. So we've been doing charity since day one. And I think it's important because it's all about giving back. So there we go, there's your answer. In less than an hour.
Yes. You did well.
Thank you.
You've got Worker Bee Coffee, brand's going well. With the product, it's really important with coffee, because everyone is. I'm a coffee snob, unashamedly. I think once you've had a nice coffee, you're on an endless search for that same kind of hit again. Yeah. It sounds very dependent, but I suppose I am. How do you? The coffee beans, the coffee, how does that work? How do you get that?
We say there's different stories out there how people do it. Because I'm from a manufacturing background, I know what goes on. So when I started, because as I said, I wasn't a coffee expert, I wasn't a diehard. I was from a sales background and I saw what was going on. So this sounds a bit harsh, but I got into my coffee business to make money originally through coffee. So that's the honest.
Everyone gets into business to make money, don't they?
There are people who are in the coffee market, and I think those are the ones that almost, whether you say left to right or right to left, there's those that actually love coffee and they love everything about coffee, and they almost accidentally get into roasting coffee because they want to, as you say, have that little bit of an influence on what's going on, and then their love obviously expands out further, and other people want to try it. So that's sort of the left side of the story, and then you get the commercial side, which is more myself. And what I decided to do is I wanted to make sure that my coffee was good, it was consistent, it was packed correctly, it was packed fresh, the packaging's good, and the whole logistics are really good. So we do use a third party, but all of what they do is what I think the cooking bit. Like, I know what goes into good food, but I'm not a good chef. Yeah. So why would I go and cook the food? I can buy the ingredients, but I want people that are good at cooking. So that's always my story, that there are people better than me that are doing what I need them to do in my business. So we will sit down and I will I even tell a good story of how I got the taste profile that I wanted, because I think there's something, I'll probably correct it on this, but I think there's something like 680 or 700 taste profiles in wine. There's almost double that in coffee.
Right.
But yet when you get into a restaurant, you get a choice of 7 white, 7 red, 2 pink, a bubbly. So you've got a choice of maybe 20.
Yeah.
Whereas you get into a coffee shop, generally you get a choice of 1 coffee bean.
Yeah.
And the way the market's gone now, the artisan roasters, they've created a new type of market, which is lightly roasted coffee. So it's very, very, it tastes, your taste profile changes when you roast coffee from acidic to alkaline. So obviously it changes the darker roast. So lightly roasted coffee is very, very popular for the artisan roasts, and we do have one in our old mill for that part of the market. We cover more mainstream because it's not for everyone, because it can be quite tangy and quite fruity, and we want to make sure that our coffee is available for everyone. So we've got a range of coffees. We've got 6 different blends that will tick whatever it is, from a Robusta based one, which is still our most popular, up to 100% Arabic is, and with specialities. But we're not technically we're not a speciality roaster, because that's not our main market. So when it comes to selecting the coffee and that, we will sit down and we will say, what are we looking for? So going back to what I call my Piccadilly Mill blend now, as I remember saying to my Q graders, when they were putting some of the blends together, I said, I want this coffee to taste like I'm sitting in Italy on a nice Sunday morning reading the paper by the sea. That's how I want my coffee to taste. So it wasn't about, I want an acidic, I want a fruity coffee, I want a caramel and chocolate notes and all that. So I was selling the experience, because I think most of us, when we drink coffee, we already subconsciously have got what experience we're going to get here. Don't get me wrong, you get good and bad coffee. So for me, I know it sounds like I'm skirting away a little bit, but coffee can give, it's what coffee offers. So because we've got a brand, you've already said when you see a pavement sign, you've already made a decision of what you're going to get. But if you've not got a pavement sign, or you've not got a branded cup, and you go into that coffee shop, the decision you're probably going to make is, what does it look like? What does the coffee shop look like? What are the people like behind the counter that are making it? How nice is the machine? How do they make the coffee? So you're having to decide how this coffee is going to taste. Whereas we're trying to say, and this is where the big brands, I think, get it really well, is they've already told people what they're going to get before you go through the door. And that's what the big brands do really, really well, because they've got a sign outside, they've got a pavement sign, they've got now all of the digital screens and that, so they'll have whatever promotion it on. So if you're going for an iced coffee, or you weren't going for an iced coffee and there's a big sign there flashing iced coffee, there's a chance that people haven't made a decision, make a decision to have an iced coffee. Sure. So that's the power of marketing. So, when it comes to the coffees we do, I break it down really simple, that we have strong, everyday breakfast coffee. So if you want a kickstart, or for the gym, Robusta based coffee is what you want. If you want something in the middle of the afternoon that's sort of pleasant for everyone, you want 100% mid-roast coffee. So I know when I go into customers, or my sales guys, or even my team in the office, they find out what type of venue it is, and we've got a blend of coffee that fit that. And it's always evolving. I've probably had 3 or 4 other coffees that we don't do anymore, because either we've got other ones that are slightly better, or the market's changed. Sure. So to answer what you said, is we've got a roaster that our coffee always tastes the same, because we blend it on taste profile, not on percentages, because coffee will grow differently if it's a wet crop or a dry crop. You take it from the farmer, the same farmer, that coffee will taste different. So you can't keep using the same farm. So it sounds a little bit taking the emotion out of it.
You can have to, don't you?
Well, you do, because what we find is the people that buy artisan roasted coffee, which is great, don't get me wrong, I say I have a lot of, I think last time I counted there was about 46 own roasters in Greater Manchester.
Wow. Okay.
I think when I started there was about 12.
Right.
So the market has got bigger, as we all know, and by the coffee shops that are opening. But what we need to do is offer something different, because for me, the next roaster will bring in a lightly roasted acidic coffee in, which is the same as what a lot of others do. We've got a range that will cover whether it is, say, the strong coffee they want, whether it is the light smooth, whether it is the fruity coffee. So we are a little bit different than that, but by doing the brand, we're telling people that it's where it could be. So they've already made a decision that they're probably going to get something. The downside of what we have with our product is when you give it to someone, if your coffee's inconsistent, and then you open the bag and you put it into a hopper of a coffee machine, a grinder, and the staff behind the counter are really good, they can make it really well. If they're not particularly good or well trained, they can make a good coffee taste bad.
Yeah.
So I find the hardest part of my business is getting people making coffee really well. The artisan roaster's in quite a good position because a lot of the time the people that buy artisan coffee for their coffee shops are independently owned. Generally, the owner of the business works there, or if they don't work there on a day-to-day basis, they're very close to the coal face, as we talked about earlier. They've spent on really good coffee equipment, they've spent on training. So what they've done is they've put a Formula One driver in to drive a Formula One car, as opposed to the rally driver that shouldn't really be in it. So it is, and it's really, really interesting. We're always looking at ways of how can we improve it. Do you do mystery shopping? Do you do training schools? Do you do regular catch-ups? It's a real, as an industry goes, I think it's really interesting. It's not like you buy a can of Coke. So the salesperson goes in and sells a can of Coke, person lifts it off the shelf, and that can of Coke, apart from being hot or cold, is going to always taste the same. Whereas when it comes to coffee, I've got customers of mine using the exact same coffee, and you wouldn't know that they're the same coffees.
Yeah.
Because equipment, staff, all of that, which as a consumer you would never even think about. And even the big chains have the same issue. You know, you get ones that have got what they call bean to cup machines. So next time you're in one of your big chains, check and see whether you can see them making the coffee or whether there's a machine in between you and them, because they could be pushing the button making it. You know, McDonald's was a good example. They accept push a button, they're in there for fast food, and you can have a coffee. Their adverts was one of the best, I thought. And then you've got the other ones that stick to, you know, traditional coffee machines, but they've always got staffing issues as well because of what's happened in the hospitality industry lately.
Yeah, I mean, when you talk about competing with brands in different industries, coffees is probably one of the biggest for brands. You know, the amount of times. So I come from I spent a couple of years in the fuel pricing industry, and you know, first thing you would look at with you know, a fuel business, a petrol station, a service station would be, well, what coffee do they sell? Because it's the main driver for fuel sales.
The tobacco companies would say it used to be that as well.
Yeah.
So it was. Yeah, so usually coffee, it was your essentials for the people who are on the road, because especially in service stations, you know, on the motorways, they were always premium priced. So generally the people who were stopping there are the ones that were caught short, or people that were paying expenses.
People that I always say to people, if you don't believe me, if you're driving on the motorway and you're looking at what services to stop at, and you see your favourite isn't the next one, you will go to the next one to see if you're the one you prefer is it the next one, and that's where you'll stop at, and that is the main driver for you spending your money at that. And
that's the power of the brands, and you know, I think the coffee industry and tea and chocolates, which hot beverages, well, even soft drinks, I'd put them all in together. They very much are pulling people by the brand cleverly. Yet you look at other industries, you know, if you take it to the sport environment, you don't see many coffee companies.
No.
And it's really weird. You don't see many people that are the top. I don't know if there's any pro golfers out there, but the pro golfers. I'm still amazed that there's not a coffee company that's decided to hit the market, because you look at coffee, you know, there's certain sports they're associated with. You know, cycling's a massive one because of caffeine and also the demographic of the person that cycles. So there is a direct association. But you're right, is that brand will make a difference whether you stop somewhere or not. And then there is the other side that there are people out there that say I would not stop there because it's a brand. And you know, and that's why it's great. The market, and we sort of say what we say is we're not an independent roaster and don't pretend to be, but our quality is, I would safely say, consistently better. And it will always taste the same in the bag, and the way we package it's fresher and it stays fresher for longer. That's one of the reasons you won't see artisan roasted coffee on the shelves and Waitrose and Tesco's and all that, because oxygen is really bad, and that's inside the bag, which a lot of people don't get. So we try and make our product as good as possible, and that's why we use the roaster that we do, and we roast our coffee the way and package it the way we do. But then you have got the big brands. So I always say that what we do is we sit in the middle. So you've got the artisan roasters that are doing the artisan style roasting and artisan style coffee, and then you've got the big boys, through the Illies, the Lavazzas, the Mattheologies, the Costas, all the big brands that people will recognise. But we sit in the middle.
Yeah.
So we're a local independent tea and coffee company. I think I heard earlier about paint. We do what it says on the tin. That's what we do. We don't pretend to be anything different. Right. And if people turn around to me, I've got even friends of mine that don't like particular coffee blends of ours. I said, I get it. I said, because there's certain wines I don't like. Yeah. Maybe there's a beer that I don't like. Everyone's got their own taste profile, so I don't get offended if someone says they don't, but they sort of get a bit protective. I don't want to say your coffee is bad. I says, for every person that doesn't like it, there is someone that will. And that's the hard between the training and putting a blend of coffee in that no one will get offended is very, very difficult to do. I suppose when you put milk into it and caramel and sugar and dilute it all down, because we're not massive espresso drinkers in the UK, we like the idea of coffee, we like what it brings, but I think if people are honest with themselves, they don't really like the taste of it. That's why they put milk into it. Or add something to it. But I even in my customers, I probably see there'd be less than 5% of their customers who drink espresso, whereas you go to Europe, it's an espresso based drink. So there is a bigger picture, I think, and it's probably more what you offer, what you want to offer in your product for your customers in the UK than I think if you're abroad, where coffee is actually taken in the purest form. So it is an interesting market.
From a branding perspective, how do you go about trying to compete with the big brands?
You can't. If I had 20 million quid, I probably could. I suppose that's the difference. You don't always. It's not always about the money and what you spend and where you put it. It's how you do it. I think, and it's not because it's my business and my brand, because I came from obviously the tobacco industry. It was all about brand, and we when I worked for Imperial, there was subtle package changes that made difference to whether it's sold or not. And those people that did smoke in the past and still do now, probably go through vapes and all the rest, which is a new version of it. People like to be associated with something, and I think the one thing about our brand is that people want to be associated with Manchester. Yeah. And I'm Manchester based. All right, I'm not from Manchester, but then. There's a lot of people in Manchester not from Manchester, but there's something to Manchester, and I said that I'd like, because we've really focused on being a southern Manchester company, mainly because we can get to everyone. That's our unique selling point. We do come further afield, we do a Riggy Bianchi here, we've got Total Fitness, which is all over sort of the northwest. We've got places in Liverpool, Leeds, so we generally get those types of business because they have somewhere in Manchester they've got another office or something like that. But when you're trying to compete against the big boys, you just have to be true for what your brand is. And I think that we've got a brand that could travel. Sort of my mission is to take Worker Bee Tea and Coffee outside of Manchester to London, because there'll be someone in London that can make a decision and goes, well, I'm from Manchester, or I worked in Manchester, and London's good, but it's not the be all and end all. And I'd like to bring a bit of Manchester south. A few of the Southerners might disagree in that, but that's an honest view, because even when we did our packaging before, I didn't put I left Manchester off the top of the logo. I just said Worker Bee, because I didn't want people outside of Manchester not to buy it because it said Manchester on it. But then we felt that the brand was more important to let people know, if they didn't know about Worker Bee, because people in Manchester do, and a lot of people didn't know about it, but now everyone recognises the bee and the tattoos and all the rest. But what I decided was, I want people to know it's Manchester, because that's more of a selling point than not. So we just changed the logo about 2 years ago, and we just subtly put Manchester across the top of the logo. Although I have had one customer that said, "Can I use your old logo?" Because they're in Liverpool.
Right.
You know, so I think the Manchester-Liverpool thing is always going to be a bit of a unique one.
Sure.
But you know, when you look at the story and what's happened back in 2017 with the arena, you know, there's people involved in Liverpool. So there's a bigger picture out there. So I think when you go back to the brand, I can only do what I can do. You know, we are growing. We've just had our best year. And so in that way we're going definitely in the right direction. But it's just identifying what markets you want to get into. We have got bigger companies that are coming to us now because they're tired of the big brands. They want something that's a bit more unique and something that says a bit more about its heritage. And I think we're small enough to be able to do that, but we probably look a bit bigger than we are. And I think that's probably because I've come from a corporate background, a branding background. Because, you know, well, we chat about social media, you know. You get your social media right, you look massive. Yeah. I get a few influencers involved, and with 10 million followers, and all of a sudden you could do all right. So technology, I think, is the difference now. I'm a bit traditional, though. I still feel that people buy off people in our industry, and that's how my business has been built. And not many people are doing that, so I want to keep that personal thing in place. And that could be an age thing. But I do get a bit concerned about how much we all disappear into our social medias and not in our current world. We'd rather find out what's going on the other side of the world as opposed to what's happening here.
I think so we've done close to 30 episodes recorded. Obviously we haven't got that many out live yet, but the main theme through them all is a thirst for humanity. Everything, and everyone has talked about people first, solution first, when they're dealing with clients, and that's the way I try and do ours, because you need to deliver something that gives value and gives the client, you know, what they want, what they need. You know, it's not always what they want that is what they need, but
or what they get.
So it's really important that the communication and how you deal with the client is important.
Yeah.
And like you say, you rarely find that on social media.
No, and there is, I think again, it's come back to, there's a percentage of the population, especially the younger generation, that's normal. But for the older generation, which I'm putting myself into now, they revert back to sort, which is just human nature. So it's the social media aspect's not normal to us, and we have to work really hard on it. But for the kids coming through now, they've grown up on it, they know it. You know, I can go back to black and white TV. That's how old I'm sure. And when you go to colour TV, and these kids didn't even know what a TV was, because you know it doesn't go on the wall. So you know it's just evolvement. But I'd agree. I think there is a big. I've my little one's 6 this week, and you know, you see with schools and how they're having to teach, and the technologies, and even the conversations about when should you give your kid a mobile phone. But with the way we live our lives now, where you've not got your family unit maybe around you as much as in the old days. So giving an iPad is the only way you can survive to get something done. And when do you do that? And then all of a sudden you turn around and say, well, no, you can't have your iPad because it's bad for you. Well, it was okay last night when you wanted to go and do the washing or whatever. So yeah, it's hard to get that balance, but I do think, you know, lockdown taught us a big lesson. I think the elastic band is stretched back, not to where it was, but definitely a lot closer, because we do get into our rat race of life again. But yeah, I'd say, you know, we talk about better well-being and a better reality of what we do and how our work-life balance is. But I think sometimes work does take over it without you realising it. And technology can, you know, make it easier in some ways too.
It can, yeah, it can really don't stop myself going too negative on it, because actually it can be really useful, and it can build businesses. It can bring a smile to someone's face for 30 seconds, and to me that's all you need.
Well, I will tell a true story, which I don't know whether I should or not. I was dropping my little one to school on Monday. I don't know why, but I put my car keys on top of the car.
Yeah.
I drove off, parked up, and I've got an electric car. Parked up, couldn't find the keys. Remembered I'd put them on the top of the car and thought they're somewhere between the house and school. But of course I ran, dropped off Alexa, got in the car, couldn't start the car because there's no keys. And I'm going, right, what am I going to do? So I started walking back, and there's only about a mile between my house and the school. So I'm walking my tracks back. I'd got a technology again, what you call it, a tag, air tag.
Right, okay.
So I knew where the last air tag was. So I was following back to there. Got back, no keys. And as I got there, my phone rang. It was my other half saying, I've just had a phone call from the next door neighbour. She's been on Didsbury Facebook. Someone's put a picture on of your keys with a picture of me and you.
Yeah.
So technology does work.
Yeah.
And I got in contact with her through Messenger. She'd already gone to town, so I was carless for the day, but at least the keys were there.
Yeah.
So there, you're right. So that's just an anecdotal one of how technology now can benefit us when you're stupid enough to leave keys on top of your car.
Stepping back a little bit, do you think your childhood being really sporty, do you think that helped you in the sales world?
Yeah, I would say, because you look at education the way it is now, and it's driven more than ever. And we're in the same boat with our little one. And some are more academic than others. So I look at the way I was brought up in sport, gave me the social interaction, the people skills, but also it gave me a determination to succeed. And also we had to put the work in. It is like anything. 9 times out of 10 what you put in is what you get out. There's always the exception to the rule that some people are lucky or they just happen to be in the right place at the right time. But generally the rule of thumb is work hard.
Generally that's come from hard work.
Yeah.
Anyway, isn't it?
And so I would say 100% yeah, because I think if I asked any of my customers, it's a bit different now because obviously I built the business on me. I did everything. I've got people that now step in to do what I used to do. And there's bits that I'm still good at, and there's parts that I wasn't particularly good at, like administration, support, and back end of the system is not my forte.
Yeah.
So I've got better people than what I was doing to do that. But as the business gets bigger, you then have to bring people in to do what you do well. And I would say I find, and everyone I talk to in not just in my business but SME businesses, the biggest problem at the minute is staff. And it's hard for staff as well because you used to get a good job, you stayed in for the pension, you stayed in for life. That's not there anymore. You look at house prices, there's not the same drive to the security of a job because it's so hard to get in a house, because it's so expensive. So I think the whole market has changed. But in relation to the graft that you have to put in, I think your childhood does influence a hell of a lot. And I was the youngest of 4. I don't know how my mum brought 4 kids up, because I know one's hard enough. But it's a different world now as well. I think we all expect a lot more between careers, between nice homes, between nice holidays, between all the classes that you put your kids into, and all the parents have to be there to watch them. I used to get fobbed off with one of my mates, and they would take it in turns to drop off to classes, and jump in the back of a car and there'd be 6 in the back seat. All the things that you can't do anymore.
I remember being in the back of a Ford Escort van with 6 other junior football teammates with our feet around the guy who owned the van. He was a plasterer, so we had all our boots, trying not to put our boots in buckets and all sorts of being driven around in the back of this van with, you just couldn't do that.
No, you couldn't, and but they're all memorable. They make you the person you are now, don't they?
Do you is staff the main challenge for you at the moment? We've got a solid base on what the business is. We've got good people in the business. The problem you have, I think, is a small business moving up.
when you're a small business, you can't afford to pay the wages of corporate wages. So you're always having to compromise to a certain extent. Not everyone's money driven, but again, it's like the general rule of thumb is you pay for what you get. Once you start trying to get to the next level, then you get into the big wages, but you're still a small business, and the first thing that does is put pressure on your cash flow. So you take your conservative look and come back, and you sort of probably accept, I'll go for the cheaper option. Yeah. We're in the middle stage now that we're pushing the business on, and I'm having to get it. Before it was always multitasking people, because if some person went off, you needed the rest of the business to happen. Yeah. Whereas now the business is getting that bit bigger that we're putting specific people in specific roles. So again, you're lifting the notch up. So it's more people and more money, but you still have to sell more product to stand still. Yeah. We only open. I made the conscious decision that after lockdown, I think we closed at 2:30 on a Monday and 4:30 every day, and Friday we closed at 1 o'clock. And I went, that's because I financially couldn't afford to pay wages any longer than that, because I didn't know what was going to happen after lockdown. Yeah. And also I found that we're all like that. It gets to 4 o'clock. I've had a big lunch. No, well, so that's one of the reasons. But then the business got busier again. But I went, hold on, and it was a bit from a selfish point of view as well, because I find it very hard to get everything into my life that I want, and I'm trying to get a bit more of a balance. So I said, right, we'll open up the normal hours, but on Friday we're still going to close at 1 o'clock. So we now close at 1. Like this afternoon, I'm taking my staff out because it's the end of our financial year. One of the guys leaving, so I'm trying to create more of a culture, because there's a big turnaround in our team lately. But I was going, and people that come in and say, I don't pay you for 4.5 days, I pay them for maybe 4.7, 4.8 days. So they get a bit more for that time. But my view on it is there's not many businesses out there that say you finish work on a Friday, and we all want more money, and we maybe want a nicer holiday, or we might want a new set of curtains, but you'll always want something extra. But for me, being able to finish at 1 o'clock on a Friday night, a long weekend, and do what you want to do with, whether it's your family, your friends, or just yourself, I think that's more important. Yeah. And not everyone gets it, because if someone come in for an interview and say, "Oh, but you're not paying me as much money," so you're not doing as many hours. I'm actually technically paying you more money for the hours you work, but because obviously it's a 4.5 day week, paid 4.7. So it's getting the right people into my business. And that's hard to find, because we are unique. As I said, it's not just a matter of selling a product and it gets consumed or it gets used. There's a lot to coffee, because you've got equipment, you've got the different product range, you've got everything that's gone in the hospitality industry. This month's been pretty quiet because we've just had the minimum wage go on. And like the hospitality industry is known to be at the lower end of the pay. Yeah. So it's had most of my customers I'm speaking to on it. It's like straight away 10 to 15% on their overheads. That's crazy. And when you look at it, the only way that they can get that back is by putting their prices up. And then me and you are walking through the door and sitting down, going, "What? A starter for £13? That's what a main course should be." Yeah. But it's all a knock-on effect. So it's going to be an interesting. We get to the summer when it quietens down anyway. So, everyone's got their own story. But there's still, people got £3.50 to buy a cup of coffee. That's the one benefit, the ticket price that it's at. Yeah. You can still have a coffee and a slice of cake for less than a tenner, let's say. But you can be in an ambience that gives you that getting together. Yeah. And that comes back to the full 360 of what I was talking about earlier. Coffee is very good for bringing people together. Yeah. Although I don't know when it'll hit the £5 mark. Someone told me, is it Starbucks? It's already already up there. So there's all these price points, people. And I go back to my tobacco days. I remember when they said it would hit a £5, that would it, everyone would stop smoking. Yeah. I don't even know what a pack of cigarettes would cost now, but so if not more. So crazy, yeah.
There's so much to cover. What do you have any advice for anyone that is thinking of setting up a business?
Don't do it.
Any advice for business owners?
And I think for me, if I was able to rewind, knowing what I know now, I would say stick true to what you believe your business is about. Take guidance from people, but don't always follow it as the gospel truth.
Yeah.
Because I have been misadvised by a number of people against my gut what to do in the business. And I look back and go, do you know what? I wish I just stuck to what I thought was right, because it's right in my business.
Yeah.
But it is hard to do, because of course when you speak to people, yeah, if you go to, I don't know, web designers or packaging people or whatever, or whatever, SEO guys, social media, but you know, there's different parts of it where you may not, like I can go out and my history is selling, so you know I can sell, but I do what they say, consultative selling. So I look at how my product can help that person or that business. So it's not like a hard sell of some other products, but when you go to the bits that you're not familiar with, like employment, like buying cars, like office management, systems, but all that, accountancy, you know, you get people referred to you, or you might get hit on social media, or you might find online a lot of the time, and depending on how good people are at getting to the top of Google and all the rest, or AI is the big one we've not even touched on, and I don't really want to because it scares me. But I look back and go, do you know, I should have used that person to do what I wanted them to do from a business, as opposed to using that person to do what they told me to do in my business. Because I know that I've wasted more money than I've gained, and that's just through experience. So again, I would just go, you know, if you start your own business, there's a reason for it. It's a big gamble, a big risk, but the benefits of it are you make a difference, you make the decision, you're the one that the buck stops at, and I think having that destiny of you're able to influence your destiny 100%. There are some people, I think my uncle said years ago, there's people that need to be employed and people that can't be employed, and I think we both said that we're the latter, but you have to be employed to experience that, because I couldn't have got to where I am now without the experience I had through the hotel. It was the best ever job I had. You know, there was no textbook for things that happened. You know, lifts breaking down at 2 a.m, what do you do? So I think that's, you need to have a bit of both, and it's not for everyone, but if you start it, go on the journey. And it's not for everyone.
Let's say it's good to be comfortable with chaos, because at some point, doesn't matter what it is, there'll be something that'll cause chaos to you, your mind, your world you're in. You know, you just got to be comfortable with it. And there's always a way through. Yeah,
100%. And you know, people ask me, "Oh, you're a perfectionist and all the rest." Well, I'm not a perfectionist. I just get things done well.
Right.
And there's bits in our business we get right, and there's bits that we get wrong. But we're obviously getting more right, because we wouldn't be growing.
Yeah.
And people wouldn't look at us as a good company if that was wrong. And the other thing is, your customers tell you. You know, we've got customers that have been with me from day one. Our retention is really, really good. Because that was one of the reasons I did what I did, because the old coffee company I worked for, who's a massive coffee company, and their whole ethos used to be the old funnel technique, where you throw more in the top that drops out the bottom. And I said, well, what you should do is you should throw it in the top and keep it. And that was the reason I did the Manchester thing, because you can get to them easier, you've got a relationship, you know what's happening. Whereas if you've got a rep that covers your area once every 2 months, and you're in the Lake District and they live in Birmingham, it's just a numbers game. So you know, you need to make sure that whatever your business is, I think that you know what you're trying to achieve out of it, to a certain extent, because you never get all the answers. And you never get it all right.
Because the podcast is mainly for business owners. You know, I think there's a story that everyone's got that people can learn from, or find something from it. I think the story people have is what is probably most compelling, and people buy from, rather than the business, depending on what you're trying to do. But one of the questions you ask is how do you measure success?
It depends. I suppose some people are in money, some people are on about lifestyle, some people are on about the time it gives them. Success for me, it's a bit of everything really. And I always say that money shouldn't be your driver. The money should be the byproduct of doing it well. Which might be a naive way of looking at it, but I think genuinely that's the way, because most people that start a business, although I said I came from a sales background and coffee wasn't my love, once I started it, coffee did become a love, because it was my product and it was my livelihood, and also when it's your own name, because I've not taken anything. Generally most of the products we have, there's the old ones that we can't do them, but they're all worker bee. They are a brand, so you can't go online and buy them because they're our products, and that gives me that little bit of warm feeling that it's ours. So yeah, I think it is. For me, I think that as you get older, I've obviously had my little one later on in life, because my career was always my driver, and that does give you a wake up call, because you physically can't do what you want to do. I say she's off school today because she's been throwing up all night, and she doesn't. It's not very often that happens, but that just look, what do you do? In the past, I never had that problem, because when you don't have kids, you just get on with your work. And you just couldn't understand why other people had to take time off work, because the kids were just going to be grandmother, but we might not have a grandmother, so I think that's a bit of a wake up, not a wake up call, but a realisation. I think I'm at the stage now that time and experience is what success is for me, and if I can facilitate that through my business, and everyone comes into work wanting to be in work, and I'll let them off. So it says, how can we finish early to watch the football? And I says, well, why, what's playing? Northern Ireland's not playing. It's not football. So I said, plug off an hour, and if everything's done, that's fine. Or at least it's one person in the office that doesn't want to watch football, that's fine. So these are all little bits that a lot of the big companies already plan for that sort of stuff. And I think as a small business, you don't particularly plan really. You're quite reactive to certain things. But the wellness of your staff, I think, will pays back tenfold, and hopefully they can, when you need to pull the socks up a little bit, or they need to step up a bit more to help out, then they do. So yeah, success is what you make it. There you go.
Well, I suppose that's a good place to stop. It's been wonderful having you on.
No, thank you. It's been enjoyable.
If we'll put all the contact details and everything for Workerbee Coffee. I thoroughly recommend it, being a coffee snob myself. It's
where's your favourite coffee? Doesn't have to be Workerbee. There's a free punt for someone here.
There's a free. It depends.
There's
a question.
Oh.
I've got favourites.
You need to be careful now, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, other coffee brands are available. Obviously, I'd go Costa over Starbucks, just purely because of my taste and my taste buds, and I like it strong as well. Apart from that, it's a quest to find something that's smooth and strong. That's all I ask.
Smooth and strong. I will endeavour to find a smooth and strong coffee establishment for you.
But Workerbee is always if I say that, like you said, the standard of coffee is usually quite consistent.
Yeah, it is a hard one, because just the last point that we've changed, because we've got say 6 different coffees and they all taste differently, noticeably different. A couple of them they're quite close and they're in the same market, but if you take our Beehive, which is a 50-50 Robusta Arabica, so Robusta's much stronger and twice as much caffeine, which a lot of people don't know, so it gives you a real kick. So if someone went into a place that had got Beehive and they're in somewhere that had got our high-end Victoria Mill, which is 100% Arabica, it's very smooth Kenyan bean, Brazil, they'd go, that tastes different. So what we've had to do now is, because we've got that bit bigger, is our pavement signs, and we've done a colour association. Now I'm not saying that every member of the public will notice it, but at least there's something there to let them know that it's beehive, worker bee, and that's Victoria, and they are different. You know, you could even go on cars and say when you go and buy a Volkswagen, but if you go and buy a Volkswagen Polo, or you go and buy a Volkswagen, I don't know, iBuzz, well, the stripe's different to that one. Why? Well, it's not got an engine. You know, so for me, coffee is quite similar to that. People get that assumption that it's the same because it's same worker bee.
We see in the packets that the different strands and different, from different parts of the world.
But that's only if you're buying retail. But if you're going to a coffee shop, most of the time you don't get to see the bag because it's behind the counter, so you won't know what it is unless and a lot of the time, which is something we're trying to get people to do, is they store it in the cupboard underneath, and then they run out of coffee and they phone you Friday at 4 o'clock and our office is closed, so they run out of coffee for the weekend. Well, if you put it up, one, that lets your customer know, and two, if you're going to run out of stock, you can see you're going to run out of stock. So there's that. That'll leave me that one. Could go on forever.
Great. Well, it's been a real pleasure, and thanks for your.
No, thanks, Tim. Thank you.
Nice.
Brilliant. Lovely.